So hello, my name is Purna Gurung, and I'm from Bhutan. And to clarify, actually, I'm a degree student from Bhutan, and I've graduated last year. And thank you for all to inviting me in this seminar. And this is my first seminar after my graduation. So to begin with, I'll be talking a short introduction about Bhutan, the environmental policy strategies that has been implemented in Bhutan, and the climate of Bhutan, and what are the impact of the climate change in Bhutan, and the interventions that has been implemented by the royal government of Bhutan. So to start up, these are the fun facts about Bhutan. So Bhutan is a tiny Himalayan country located between the two developed nations, that India and the China. So with a total area of 38,000 square kilometer, and the population range starts from 7 lakh. And the elevations of the Bhutan ranges from the 100 meter from the southern part to the 7,000 meter to northern part. And Bhutan main policy is to conserve the environment, and which states that the constitution of Bhutan states that it is mandatory to maintain 60% of the forest coverage all the times. Until now we have forest coverage of 70.5%. And and since the environment is the main priority of the government of Bhutan, we have 50% of the area as a protected area to conserve the environment. And to move on, regarding the economic, we have around 79% of the Bhutanese people are dependent on the agriculture sector, and agriculture is the main backbone for the Bhutanese people. And this hydropower is the second largest contributor revenue to the government of Bhutan, and it's about 20% of the GDP, gross domestic product. So moving on to the Bhutan environmental plan policies and strategies. So the former Prime Minister has stated that Bhutan is a carbon neutral economy. Bhutan has the capacity to sequester the carbon then it emits. So another one is the 60% of the forest coverage, which is mandatory to maintain all the time. And even the green economic policy, which is also implemented by the Tourism Council of Bhutan, which states with a logo of high value and low volume tourism policy. We mainly focus on the preserving of our environment than looking at the quantity we invite. And the policy is one policy is the gross national happiness, which is the development philosophy of Bhutan to maintain and balance the social economic development with other indicators. And the middle path is an philosophy, which is a guiding book, which states that the resources has to be utilized in such a way that it should not compromise the future generation. And so to give an example is the Bhutan National Adaptation Program, which is the first project in Bhutan that has been implemented, and it was implemented to fight back with the climate changes that has occurred in Bhutan. So let me talk on the climate of Bhutan. So climatically, Bhutan is divided into 3 subtropical areas, that is southern foothill, central, and high alpine. So from here, the southern foothills are the area that receive more number of precipitation, followed by the central, and high alpine, they receive rainfall of 500 mm per year in a form of snowfall. So this is the climate change, which describes about the change in temperature, change in precipitation pattern, and the disaster that has been occurred in Bhutan. And this data is from the National Adaptation Program action. So to move on, let me talk about the greenhouse gas emission trends in Bhutan. From here we can see that the trend line from the fossil, that is the total energy in the industry, are the main leading industry that are leading to more emission of greenhouse gases, and followed by agriculture. So agriculture is also included in emission of greenhouse gases because of the survival emissions. And since agriculture is in Bhutan, agriculture is a subsistence farming. So moving on to the glacier in Bhutan. So this is a cumulative change from 1980 to 2010 data, which and here we can see the number of glaciers over the years is increasing, but the glacier area is decreasing over the years. So this is the repeated photo of the northern part, which is Rinchen Zela, which is located in northern side of Bhutan. From here we can see that in 1984 there is only the formation of snow, and in 1999 there are some formation of river, and in 2009 the formation of lake, which is the so let me talk on the glacial lake of outburst flood gulf in 1994, which has occurred in Bhutan, in Punakha and the Wangdi side. So it was caused due to Lugotso, which Tso means lake. And to explain more about the gulf that has occurred in Bhutan in 1994, I have a short video on this. So how do you go back?
During the upcoming climate change negotiations in Copenhagen this December, developing nations will be asking for more generous and more reliable funding for adaptation projects. Poor countries will likely be the most affected by the impacts of climate change and least able to cope with them. In September, I hiked for 21 days into northern Bhutan to see how the tiny Himalayan nation is dealing with a warming world. The landscape of northern Bhutan is peppered with glaciers, but the glaciers are retreating rapidly, and experts say they could disappear completely by 2035. The silt and boulders pushed aside by the glaciers form natural dams that hold in meltwater. Some of these dams have given way to produce deadly and destructive floods in the river valleys, where most of Bhutan's population lives. Dawa Gyelchin is a local yak herder. He invited me into his home, and over a cup of salty butter tea told me how the fields in front of his house were washed away by the last flood. My final destination was the Tortomi Glacier near the border with Tibet. I climbed to the top of the dam at the foot of the glacier and saw for myself how quickly the glacier is melting. As more ice melts, pressure is building up behind the dam. Scientists are worried that it could soon collapse, unleashing a torrent of water from Tortomi into Rapstring Lake to its west and on into the valley below. Karma Teb is leading a project to reduce the pressure on the dam and prevent a catastrophic flood. In the outlet from the melting glacier, hundreds of Bhutanese laborers scrape away boulders and stones to deepen the outlet and increase drainage. The project's aim is to lower Tortomi's waters by 1.67 meters every year, but they're running behind. The team's crude measuring stick shows that after the first year, they've only managed around 90 centimeters. Tenet of non-extremism, the monarchy has prioritized economic development, but not at the expense of the country's natural environment and cultural traditions. Whereas many developing countries have struggled to get funding for their projects, Bhutan was the first country to get money from a special United Nations fund for adaptation projects in the developing world. But even after $7.4 million of investment, the project is only dealing with one of the country's almost 3,000 glacial lakes. Floods are only the tip of the iceberg in terms of the consequences of melting glaciers. With all the water and ice I saw on my trip, it's hard to imagine water shortages here. But if the Himalayan glaciers disappear, it will affect the water supply of around 750 million people in Bhutan and the rest of Asia.
How do you close this? How do you close it? Okay. Thank you. So that was a short video on the 1994 glacier lake outburst in Bhutan. So these are some of the photos that I have selected, that and these are the disaster damages that has occurred in Bhutan. The recently one is in July 2018 at Tashigang, which is located in the northern part, and followed by Samse. So let me talk on the impact of climate change in Bhutan. So number one is the water resources. As we all know that when there is a change in climate, the temperature will obviously change, which will increase the precipitation and has a negative impact on the hydropower. The other one is the agriculture. Since the 79% of the Bhutanese people depend on the agriculture sector, it has also impacted the cultivation, subsistence farming practices. Due to change in the climate, due to change in the temperature, the adaptation of the crops has been impacted. And for an example, the oranges that used to be famous from the Samruk Dzongkhar, which is the southern part of Bhutan, is been affected, and now the oranges is better from Tsirang, which is the central part of the Bhutan. And the forest and biodiversity, the natural disaster is another impact of the climate change, and the human health. Human health is related to like a tropical outbreak of tropical diseases and heat stroke. So let me go with the interventions that has been implemented in Bhutan by the royal government of Bhutan. So number one is the Integrated Water Resource Management, which is IWRM, and Bhutan Water Security Index System. So moving on, so IWRM is a systematic process of developing the systematic process of the development and allocation of water resources in an equitable way, and it focuses on how the wastewater can be reused, and it also includes the different policies and rules and regulations to be implemented and the stakeholders to be involved. So IWRM is on basis of the gross national happiness, which is where the conservation of environment is also one of the fundamental priority of the government, and the Water Act of Bhutan, which is 2011, and the United Nations Sustainable Development Goal. So moving on, this is the IWRM can be understood in a spiral learning process, where states that IWRM is a process of understanding in a holistic manner, in an iterative way. So from here we can see that first is to identify the issues that is occurring in the state, and the different solutions that can be implemented, and conceptualize the strategies and involving the different stakeholders to implement it. And it also includes monitoring of the process. So the main objective of the IWRM is the water security, which is the accessibility and in various quantity for the various purpose of the water use to a certain risk, which means when there is too much of water, that is also not good for the country, and when there is too little of water, that is also not good for the country. So it has been defined in two ways, that is the physical availability. In Bhutanese context, the water, there is no problem of scarcity, but the problem is with accessibility. Accessibility, because, so let me explain with the this diagram. From here we can see on an average the water is available to most of the household in Bhutan, but the question is about the accessibility. So downstream we can see that there are plenty of water, but the household that are on the hillside has the water scarcity problem. So what I feel in Bhutan is the problem of the investment that needs to be implemented, and different strategies and investment from the different organizations. So Bhutan Water Security Index is one of the guiding framework for the agencies to work, and it was adopted from the Asian Water Development Outlook. And in Bhutan we have 57 parameters with 5 dimensions. So these are the 5 key dimensions of the BWSI. Number 1 is the rural drinking water supply, sanitation and hygiene. And the urban water supply and sanitation and drainage are somewhat related. From here we can see the water pipeline that is connected to the household, each household, the sanitations, the type of toilet they use, and the hygiene. These data are collected from the NEC and the hospital. And the environment, water security is related to the pristine environment and disaster and climate change resilience on the flood and due to caused by the climate change. So this is the how processes are tackled through IWRM and BWSI. So BWSI is explained in a spider web, and it ranges in the scale of 1 to 5. From here, the government of Bhutan each year tries to improve the different dimensions with a scale of 1 to 5. And to conclude, so Bhutan, as we know that Bhutan is a carbon net sink for the greenhouse gas, but still we are facing a climate change in Bhutan. And so glacier lake Gulf is not only the factor that causes climate change. Even like cyclones are the main factors. And in Bhutan we say that we have enough water, but it's the problem still. Then we have the problem of scarcity. Thank you.